Hey there, and welcome to Time to Lean, the podcast where you air your dirty laundry and we help you clean up your shit. I'm Crystal Britt.
And I'm Laura Danger. Think of us as your household secret weapon, taking your questions and voicemails to navigate the wild world of gender norms and household dynamics.
We dive headfirst into the nitty-gritty of how broader social issues impact our everyday lives.
So don't be shy, send us your dirty laundry.
And we'll help you clean up your shit.
This is Time to Lean.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Time to Lean. I'm Crystal Britt. This is Laura Danger. I would suspect that if you follow us on any level of social media, you maybe have been like, hey, are they going to talk about this? Because I feel like, and I don't know about you, Laura, it feels like this particular topic and event has been, I feel like I've seen more videos shared on this. Like this hit a universal nerve with every single woman that I know because it was so egregious.
Yeah, it's absolutely outrageous before we got on this call. So we'll talk about it, but I was gaining additional context for this. And when you logged on, my face was real messed up. Like this is wild. This is wild. What is it?
Yeah, we're talking about Harrison Butker this week, and the speech that he made at Benedictine College this week. That I mean, a speech is, I feel like, saying it gracefully. This was like, I picture like on that episode of The Office where they're trying to prep Dwight for like a presentation speech that he has to give at a big Scranton Dunder Mifflin meeting, and they're teaching him how to give a speech, and it's like but they're using prompts and videos of Mussolini. That is more what I'm picturing when I think of Harrison Butler giving this speech. It's not a speech, it's a rant. He went on a rant.
Yeah.
He had a fit.
Here's the other thing. This is me maybe just being mean right out of the gates.
That's okay. He was not nice, so you're allowed to be mean out the gate.
No, he is not nice. He looks like he was maybe a pretty boy, a golden boy in high school.
Yeah, conventionally attractive. There's no way.
But he also is the kind of like, I mean, I grew up with a lot of like golden boys, and they came from like super wealthy families, and they were just going to inherit daddy's business, and they could like do whatever the fuck they wanted. And they were always really cruel, like needlessly cruel. He reminds me of so many of the pretty boys that I grew up with. And he's just a little dunce. Like I look at him and I'm like, what can I pick apart? Like all I want to do is insult this man. I'm like, oh, look at your stupid little buck teeth. I bet they were stupid little buck. And it's like, I mean, I have the same teeth. It's not rational. I just like your ears stick out a little bit too much, buddy. And like it brings up this middle school like defensiveness that is so deep inside of me because of what an asshole he is.
Ugh. That's a really interesting insight, because I feel like that is probably why we're seeing it on our For You page 800,000 times with Stitches, because this hits up, you're exactly right. This hits a middle school, high school part of me in my heart, where I need to be clear, as an 8th grader, I had a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, like in my own fucking handwriting, like taped into my locker. Do you know what I mean? Like I was that kind of person. So I feel like it's a very base, like because middle school is where you start to realize the privilege, the undue privilege and power that boys have, where you're like, what the fuck? Why do I have to wear a one piece? And he gets to have his shirt off at the school pool party, which is what I have top of mind, right? Where I'm like, it comes from like that base rage of like, okay, fuck you, dude. Have you had like a difficult situation? Like you were really upset.
Okay. So Harrison Butker Jr. is an American football kicker of the Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL. He played college football at Georgia Tech and was selected by the Carolina Panthers on the 7th round of the 2017 NFL Draft. He is second in NFL history in career field goal percentage. He's a kicker.
Yeah, yeah.
And from what I've learned, a kicker's the silliest, goofiest, like,
He's God's silliest soldier in every
yeah.
single way, including being a kicker. And everybody being like, well, he's the greatest kicker in NFL history. He's the second great. It's like, cool. I'm the second greatest chicken tender eater in my family, second only to
Mm-hmm.
my 5-year-old. Like, we can
Mm-hmm.
all make up titles if you want. Whatever.
And he's a white man. Uh, he's a white man, pretty boy, 6'4", Catholic. His he's got wife and children. Does he have children?
Oh, that's a really great question. I would assume so, since he talked about his wife taking care of his children. Here's me crossing my
Two.
fingers that he doesn't have
Two.
any daughters.
Oh yeah, he does. Don't worry.
Oh, are they both girls? Does he have 2 daughters?
It looks like at least one of them because she's wearing pink headphones. That's how I know she's wearing.
Oh, well, I
in the
mean,
picture.
clearly. Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, the muffled for the Super Bowl. Yeah, because the boy has black, and so the girl has to have pink, so you can tell them apart. Otherwise, they're indistinguishable from each other. Fuck me. It's just like for anybody, just be. I mean, I know all of the listeners share the same sentiment, or they wouldn't be listening to this. But just be forewarned, this is in no way going to be favorable for Harrison Butker if you're
No.
holding up hope.
No.
Yes. Okay. So he is Catholic. What's really interesting is I was listening to Molly McPherson, who's a PR specialist, who has a huge following on TikTok, talking about how she is also Catholic. He was raised Catholic, left the faith, and then came back to the faith, which I want to talk about for a second, just because I feel like that is so important when we're talking about gender essentialism and the horrendous shit that he said. Because I feel like people who come back to the faith after leaving it come with this like almost like savior complex of like, this is the answer and I'm gonna beat any, and I'm Catholic, Christian, any sort of like religious awakening where you come back to it is like their existence hinges on it in more ways than one. If you pull at a thread, their whole existence and meaning for life would come apart and they wouldn't know what to do with it. So they come with a zealousness, a zeal about it that's like truly bonkers to me.
Yeah. I don't know if we've said it yet. So he's in the news right now because he did a commencement speech at Benedictine Catholic College. Is it an all girls, all women's college, or there were just a lot of women in the audience?
I think he was just specifically, it's a liberal arts college. So I think the idea is that like there are a lot of women, but I'm going to Google it right now. Is it all women? I don't think so. No, men and women.
Okay.
But
so
being liberal arts, I would assume like mostly women wanting to be teachers.
That's God. So yeah, he did this speech, 20-minute commencement speech, and it was atrocious. Like there is one specific clip of it that is going incredibly viral that we will talk about. And I got about halfway through it. The beginning of it is very, I mean, he hits all of the stuff. He talks about
trope, every stereotype of gender essentialism he hits. Like check
everything. Well, he's very anti COVID precaution. He is very, there are two genders and there are roles made for us by God and you have to fulfill them. And God wants us to be one thing, which is a husband and a wife above anything. And then he talks about like weird stuff about a bishop not being like, we should be kissing the rings of bishops. It's very bizarre. It's very bizarre.
Like
and then
bishops not taking enough of their power and like living in fear like during COVID and they're like being cowards, which is wild coming from the cat, like as someone who effectively is like he's representing the Catholic faith, which right now does not have a great track record with taking power and using it well.
No. And that's what I find very fascinating is, like this is incredibly conservative and and he's just like, I have the gall to say. So very bizarre. But is there anything I missed there?
No, all accurate. It's here's the other thing, and Laura and I were talking about this prior to jumping on this call, but I saw one TikToker's take on it, which was like, "Oh, this is great PR for the Chiefs when they're based in Kansas City, and there's been all of this stuff around Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, and like, oh, she's so liberal, he's so liberal, which I debatable in my opinion, but." Having that losing a fan base, like a portion of a fan base because of all the attention. Like remember in the fall when they were like everybody was watching and buying Kelsey jerseys and Kansas City Chief jerseys because of the Taylor Swift madness. There were so many white men that were very, very angry about it, had big, big feelings. And so they were losing the idea is that they were losing ticket sales. So what do you do to get that fan base back? You bring back this guy. You bring this, like this guy does a speech. Like I can't. In what context do you think he's never done it? I mean, this is so interesting. I forgot about this. He has done one like this before. Hold on, let me find it. I was about to say he's never done one like this before, but he has because I saw it on a different TikTok. But I can't Google and talk at the same time. This is going to be bad. So anyway, I'm going to find it. But the idea being you bring out this guy with incredibly conservative values to get that fan base back. And that's why they're using it now. And that's why he won't face blowback from Kansas City Chiefs, which he hasn't. And the only group that's come out to speak against it or be like, hey, we're going to distance ourselves from that is the NFL, who Molly McPherson pointed out, brought out the DEI guy to talk about, not the commissioner, but the DEI guy to say, hey, we don't support that. Like, we're not behind that. We're all about inclusion, which is funny because you just said before we hopped on that Harrison Butker like railed against DEI.
Yeah, he said that the world wants Catholics to be quiet against the tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion. What he said in this speech.
A tyranny.
The tyranny. No. And I mean, the NFL is one of those institutions that, like, how many of those men have beaten their wives? And like everyone knows about it, or like raped people, you know, like these are not, they aren't facing consequences. And I don't know. I mean, their players are not well taken care of. They have concussion.
Fully. The whole thing is gross. I found it.
Okay.
He gave a speech at Georgia Tech last year in 2023, which resurfaced in light of his Benedictine, this is from People magazine, his Benedictine commencement address, in which he asserted a woman's role is as a homemaker. In the speech last year's graduating class at Georgia Tech. Okay, so he says, quote, there's a feeling of hopelessness for the future, and we continue to become entrenched in our respective groups. He attacked what he dubbed identity politics and said that it, quote, caused us to look at one another through a prism of hate and lack of respect for the human person. Butker said during the 2023 speech that he had a controversial anecdote to young adults' feelings of loneliness, anxiety, and depression, quote, get married and start a family. He highlighted his on-the-field wins with the Chiefs before saying that, quote, the truth is none of these accomplishments mean anything compared to the happiness I have found in my marriage and in starting a family. My confidence as a husband and father, and yes, even as a football player, is rooted in my marriage with my wife as we leave our mark on future generations by the children we bring into the world. How much of a legacy can anyone ask for? How much greater of a legacy can anyone leave than that? He told the 2013 graduates.
This might be like totally a veer off of this, or maybe it'll come back. I have been thinking so much lately as our world is the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
I have been questioning the idea of having children very much, like as a concept. And the reason
just now
why people, I mean, I think about it a lot, but especially lately where I'm like, as a society, we do not respect children. We don't think they deserve dignity, or they don't matter until they grow up into adults that can work. As he says, as the Benedictine values say, they are just future workers and prayer machines. But like, if we think that our lives have no other purpose than to procreate, that is so sad. That is so sad.
It's so reductive and
Yeah.
diminutive or diminutive. It reduces you down to legitimately what you can biologically produce. He also in this speech blasts IVF, which as a person who
Oh,
experienced secondary infertility, I did not have to use IVF, but I have so many friends and queer friends who clearly have to conceive with IUI, IVF. Like, it's so wild to me to like talking like in that Georgia Tech speech, talking about the innate value of everyone. Like, fuck you. How
oh,
can you say
okay.
those two things at the same time?
No, and it's so hypocritical. I oh my gosh. So I absolutely powered through this book yesterday, called Black Disability Politics.
Ooh.
It's great. And actually Amani Barbarin is the narrator. Crutches
Oh,
and
that's
Spice.
cool. Okay. Black disability politics.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it on my list. And we'll
Yeah.
put it in the show notes.
It's what I especially found interesting is like it's a bit like a textbook. Like it's very much a resource, but it's an accessible resource. It's very cool. Um but the author is talking about like the inherent value of people, and just that, like, the point of creating a just world where it really does mean that we all have inherent value is not to remove disability.
Mm,
It's to remove barriers or violence or oppression.
yes.
So-
It's to
And
prevent harm.
right, right. Like being disabled is not a problem. Having a disability is not a problem. It's the lack of care, it's the violence people face, it's the oppression that they face. And I think that I don't know if it was explicitly taught to me as a Catholic, but I think like I grew up Catholic. I don't know if it was that or if it was just like a culture of this, but in the book the author talks about like a virality. Is that the word? Like being
Oh, being virile. Yeah. Hmm.
virile. Yeah. Being able to have children is it's a positive trait of masculinity. And oftentimes disability is framed as a punishment from God.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Okay.
and laying hands on someone to heal them and like to no longer be disabled, or
Yes.
like you need to pray more, or
Yes.
like you have to be more godly. That's fucked. That's cruel.
Were you raised like that? Were
uh
you raised like
no,
to understand disability that way? Okay. So, no, I can
maybe
tell
I'm saying like culturally I
culturally.
absorbed that, but I
Sure.
don't like I don't think like definitely not in my family of origin or like the people that I talked to. It was never like, oh, they must have done
Right.
something like definitely not like that. But we live in a society that treats disability like a punishment. So yeah, I picked that
100%.
up.
Yeah, like you've done something wrong. Yeah,
Mm.
what sticks out to me is that it was focused on enough that I can tell you that I know that there's a story in the Old Testament where the Bible says that God closed her womb. Like God closed someone's womb because she didn't have enough faith. And like I know that it was never explicitly said, but of like, well, I mean maybe it was though. But I remember, like, I never took that and relate it to other disabilities. Like, that has been part of my deconstruction that I do now, have done and do now. But very much that message of like, where I was like, kind of like the amount of when I tease my mom, where I'm like, you're the only reason I left the faith is because you gave me enough skepticism to ask all the right questions. When somebody would bring up something like that, like God closed her womb, I'm like, like even before deconstruction, I'm like, no, that's some fucking misogynistic bullshit. Like controversially, I don't. That's not related. I'm not even gonna say it. But it's like anything that was brought up where it was like, oh well, women, if you don't have enough faith, like women can be punished and you'll be made infertile. I was like, that's fucking manipulative. That's manipulative.
Yeah, that's uh That's another thing that I found this book to be very interesting. I the author talks about like the fact that oftentimes faith does play so it's about Black disability politics, as in like oftentimes civil rights and like anti-Black activism or like against racism politics and activism often also is like intertwined with disability politics because of just how many systems of oppression there are,
Yeah,
and
intersect.
who gets um and yeah, she talks about the role of religion and the role of religion to Black Americans, and
Oh my
how
God.
religion can enforce certain things. Like, it's very complex, and as a white person who isn't particularly, never really was particularly religious, it's been so informative and like given me such an interesting perspective onto something I really had no concept of. And so it's just like a new lens. It's very fascinating. So if any of that resonates, I think everybody should check this out. But it is really fascinating to think about like misogyny and uh, ableism and racism and the way it shows up in the church and bullshit like this speech.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And how it like shows up in, especially in this speech, with no pretense of like, this is just like saying, I watched some clip and I think I sent it to you of like two morning talk show hosts where she's like, it's a husband and a wife. So she's like, oh, hello, Rich. Like, I'm so happy to be here to serve you. What a beautiful day here in Gilead. Like, I'm like, no, it's straight Gilead shit. Where it's like, no, this is Handmaid's Tale stuff that you're saying out loud now. That you're not even acting like is like, oh, well, like I really feel this way, but I'm gonna like pitch it in a softer way. It's like, no, you're fully saying the quiet part out loud. And he's not in the mind, like he's not I mean, he may be a minority, but they're very loud. Like he's not alone in being part of a population who believes this stuff and who
Oh
truly,
yeah, the
really,
room.
truly believes that it's like their greatest duty in the world.
He was well received. This speech was very well received, which is fascinating. And that's the interesting perspective from where I stand, is I was not taught this. Why, or was I? And I just like in one ear out the other? Was that like one
No,
of the weird benefits of disassociating all the time?
and all the time, always, constantly. Is this why I disassociated? Well, here's
Hmm.
the other thing too, is that I do think that, and especially growing up in evangelical church, each individual like church, and I would assume it's the same in the Catholic Church parish, or like each individual like meeting place has its own like microcosm of like beliefs, where it's like, well, I could say this at this home group, but I can't say it in the larger context of church, just like with anybody that I run into at church. um and Southern California Baptist churches are going to be very different than Deep South Baptist churches. But I do think so. There may be something to like regionally where you grew up and understood this. But like, I also think, like, again, I said it earlier, the idea that like when you come back to the faith as an adult, and usually it's when people have kids, right? Because they're like, well, the future. And he says that, like, leaving a legacy, and what's the greatest legacy that you can leave? But that is also where even away from religion, women in particular can get wrapped up in their identity, their only identity as mother. Anyone socialized as female, right? We're like, well, the only thing within the capitalist system, the only thing that I'm worth producing are children and the care that I provide for those children. That's my capital J job. And that's the most important job I'll have. I love my kids. I love my kids. If they grow up thinking that parent is the most important the most important role, or the most like that their self-worth comes from being a parent, I get fucked up when I do that. Because some days I'm a really bad parent. Some days I'm not a great parent, or I'm not the parent that I want to be. And so it's like, I would rather than be like, I'm good at like I'm valuable as I am. no matter what roles I take on or decide not to take on. Right? Like I agree with, there's a book coming out soon. I was just looking at it in NetGalley, but it's about the conscious decision to be child free or to not have children, because like as a matter of like, think it through. Like, let's think this through, and validating that life. Like if my kids decide to never have any children, I'm not going to be like, well, future generations, what are you going to do?
Right.
It's like,
right.
no, that's fine.
That's what's fascinating. Let's listen. Can I play the part that's going viral?
Please.
Okay. This is from the official Commencement Address 2024 Benedictine College YouTube.
Unadulterated.
They have this up.
Yeah.
Comments off, but this is what it is.
Living out your vocation, you will ensure that God's church continues and the world is enlightened by your example. For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now about to cross the stage and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on the stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker. She's a primary educator to our children. She's the one who ensures I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. She's the person that knows me best at my core, and it is through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation. I say all of this to you because I have seen it firsthand, how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise.
Do you want to say something there? Oh, you're muted.
Oh my God. So sorry. I had to have you stop. The absolute wildness to say something like, hopefully through fulfilling both of these roles, we will attain salvation. Like, even if you grew up in an evangelical or a Christian, Christ-centric religious upbringing, the idea that the way that you act in your home and the children that you raise and it's so hardcore spiritual bypassing. I don't even know what to do with it. And spiritual bypassing is where you throw out a platitude so that you can not talk about whatever is underneath that. There's so much there. Sorry, that line literally made me sick to my stomach.
What do you mean? I'm not incredibly familiar.
God. Okay, so the idea generally, I mean, if you put this in front of any Christian, that line of hopefully we'll be able to attain salvation through these roles what did he fucking say? I want to make sure I'm not misquoting because I also don't ever want to be called to be like, oh, I misquoted it, but I have it. Okay. She is the person that knows me best at my core, and it is through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation. The implications for single mothers, for divorced people, for anyone who is not marriage as one of the sacraments is like a whole other situation that I could go off on. The idea that I am made more complete in a deeply salvation, I think we can all agree would be the salvation that he's talking about here is in an afterlife spent in heaven. That is the ultimate example of salvation, right? Like that is what he is alluding to. The idea that your marriage is what that would hinge on is fucking bonkers to me, especially living in a world that is very actively being set on fire like arsonists get paid for the job. Like, it is so wild to me that we would like, it's so besides the point of like, cool, so like world events are not important, how you treat other people is not important. Like, this, if I am an asshole in every other context, but I'm a good wife, I attain salvation. That's how I attain salvation.
And a good wife according to specific rules
and roles.
Yeah.
Sorry, that like this shit, when patriarchy and religion, where they converge, it makes me so fucking angry because it's so manipulative, and it is never in the favor in a male-female relationship, in a cis heteronormative relationship, is never in the favor of the woman.
No, and no, I see what you're getting at, and I think it's fascinating. Like, within a 20-minute speech, I mean, I only listened to 14 minutes of it, but he goes to have a speech where you talk about COVID precautions being bad, and then go to, if you are a good wife and a good husband and you care for each other there, then you're going to go to heaven. Like you said, like, that doesn't make sense.
No,
that there's no logic there. Like, caring about people, well, I guess it makes sense if you think that disability is a curse, a smite from God, or whatever the hell. Like, of course, because if you're gonna die because of COVID, that's on you. I'm a good husband. I work hard.
Right. You're like, what?
I'm gonna go to heaven.
Hello? Like, draw that line for me.
Yeah, it's wild. Well, let's see what else he says, because I haven't heard this part.
And move closer and closer to God's will in their life. Isabel's dream of having a career might not have come true, but if you asked her today if she has any regrets on her decision, she would laugh out loud without hesitation and say, heck no. As a man who gets a lot of praise and has been given a platform to speak to audiences like this one today, I pray that I always use my voice for God and not for myself. Everything I am saying to you is not from a place of wisdom, but rather a place of experience. I am hopeful that these words will be seen as those from a man not much older than you, who feels it is imperative that this class, this generation, and this time in our society must stop pretending that the things we see around us are normal. Heterodox ideas abound even within Catholic circles, for let's be honest.
What's heterodox?
Hold on, what's heterodox? That feels like a made-up Fox News word. Not conforming with accepted or orthodox beliefs or standard.
I don't know what that means.
Did he use that word with, like, did it mean what he thought it meant? Although the religious meaning remains, the adjective heterodox can describe someone who adheres to any atypical beliefs, such as scientists who buck the current thinking or politicians who do not toe the party line. The word can be a synonym of heretical, someone with contrary beliefs.
Okay, I don't know what he's talking about.
I don't think he does either. We can probably
stop there.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to stop.
I think that's enough. Okay, what did you want to say about it? What did you want to say?
I mean, what didn't I want to say? I will say that it's very interesting because I think that there are a couple of things happening on the internet right now with it, because my dad and I were talking about something, and he said, did you see that Kansas City Chief kicker's speech? And I said, yeah. Did you? And he goes, yeah, I mean, it was like pretty traditional values, but like, I don't understand what people are making a huge stink about. And he saw enough online to be like, there's something about this. And I said, Dad, did you see where he told women that they were he used the word diabolical, that women had been diabolically lied to because they put their interests and pursuits behind career moves instead of being a homemaker. And he used the word homemaker, and he was like, what? And I go, oh, I think I get what's happening here. My dad is much more of a Fox News guy than anything else. And so I'm like, that's really interesting that he and I both experienced that. Because he goes, oh, well, I didn't listen to the whole speech. I go, to be fair, neither did I. Like, reading it this morning was as much as I had done. But very interesting that, like, a really good example of media literacy where it's like, we were both being fed this same speech into totally different contexts. That was really important for he and I to connect on. And he's like, well, like, I don't agree with that. And I was like, yeah, that's what's bonkers about it. I don't have a problem with anyone choosing to be a homemaker or choosing to stay at home, right? Like the idea that like intersectional feminism, that's what it's about, but it's not a default or a God-given role that I'm like more biologically geared to. So that's what I'm forced to do or forced to say yes to. That's bonkers.
Really interesting. Yeah, I wonder why. I wonder how like Fox News and conservative outlets are spinning this, that people are being hysterical about it. Is that like,
I'm gonna look it up right now.
okay, so I have not been following the conversation about this online. 8 million people, lots of people in our like little niche, our little corner of the internet are having reactions to it and talking about it and taking their perspective. And the one, actually, I will say that one that is really funny to me, like a funny take that I have seen, and maybe you've seen these, it's slides of, it's like a woman, like a young woman graduating, and she's like, I got this, I did this, and she's like, I have a master's degree, I have this incredible career, and then it's them playing football at college, or there's someone who like competed against Georgia Tech, or is that where he's from?
Yes,
That's
Georgia
college.
Tech. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so she's like, actually, I beat Georgia Tech as a quarterback. She's like, and it's like, what? Like, it's hard. And there's like a couple of those that have been really funny to me, very quippy. But there was one that I saw that was like, was basically like, the whole point of feminism is that we have a choice to be able to do this or that. And then there were a lot of people in the comment section like, yeah, like my most feminist friends totally support my choice to be a stay-at-home mom. And I didn't like that.
Yeah, say more.
I didn't like that.
How did it hit you?
Well, I find it interesting. So like the point of feminism, the idea that the point of feminism is that women have the same choices and abilities that men do is not, that's in my opinion not what feminism is. I don't think that's the point of feminism, to either have a career or a home or just to split chores 50-50.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like it to me.
Okay, here's a question that I have based on that point, which is so interesting because I do think that there is more deconstructing that I have to do sometimes when things like this come up that feel more nuanced to me, where I'm like, yeah, on its face value, like those, like that series of slides, I'm like, yeah, I'm in it. Yes, I agree with that. And then, yeah, if my friend decides to be a homemaker, like, yes, I'm on board with that. But then there are those spaces of like, the question I have is, do you think that a woman could stay home and be the primary caregiver of small children? When I picture like stay-at-home mom, that's what I'm picturing, like young school-age kids. Do you think that can ever be equitable?
No. No. And here's why in my head. Because of fucking capitalism. Like, to me, feminism isn't a standalone thing. Feminism is not about equality of men and women. That's not what it's about, because like under these systems, yeah, you will never effectively ever have the choice under capitalism, because your measurement is always going to be about productivity and a work that creates a product. And to me, and I know you talked about this, maybe you can talk a little bit more about womanist theology, but like, to me, womanism, or like centering marginalized women when it comes to social justice issues or like liberation building and all of that stuff, is like, when you have the conversation of choice, you are completely leaving out like disability, like Black disability politics. It's like there's a total lack of humanity, because what if you can't keep a home and raise a child or go out and work? Like, what if none of that is a thing that you feel drawn to, or that's not your purpose? That's not our fucking purpose, to be a worker.
Right.
That's and earn and have even that, where I'm like, okay, no, it can never actually be fair because of all of these bigger issues. And it's not about who's going to earn more. It is about that, because you can't survive without money, and because our systems are so oppressive, and we can't have our basic needs met without it. Like, that's the fucking problem in my head.
Yes, because it's not a binary problem of like, well, just making choice equal is the problem, right?
Oh, it's like choosing bad and bad.
Right. It's choosing the like the best of two bad choices. Yes, and having that, and I think too, what I think you're getting to, like a point that you're also making, is like there, under those capitalist systems, there will always be a power dynamic, an inherent power dynamic. If one of you is providing cash, like a cash flow, and the other one is providing care, physical care for children, one of those is always going to be more valued than the other, no matter who's doing it or how equal or how important you say that work is.
And I've been trying really hard to reframe, and especially like in my language, when I talk about power, and like I'm not saying this because we're doing it wrong. I'm saying this like because I think it's really interesting. The way that Bell Hooks talks about power, and how we always have inherent power. Like, we have power. You can't take somebody's power, but you can exploit them and suppress them. And so, like, when I think about it that way, in a family dynamic, if there is one person who is doing the most essential work is work. If they're doing the caregiving and domestic work and contributing that way, they're just being suppressed and exploited more and in a different way. And when someone goes out and works an exploitative job or exploits other people, they're being exploited in another way, but with more autonomy.
Right.
And you are exploited less or afforded more budge or more access or privilege.
Right.
When you have money.
Yeah.
And so it's not so much like, that's why the choice feminism is not a thing. Like, you don't actually have choice. Like you said, like, you're always going to, because we don't have social resources, because there are all of these challenges outside of the home. If I dedicate 30 years of, if I dedicate 18 years of my life to raising my children, and I facilitate my partner's career, he now has more autonomy, flexibility, and privilege than I do.
Yeah.
I might have some of the most valuable connections. I might have some really, really great things that have enriched my life, but I do not have the flexibility and privilege that he would, if that's the case.
Right. And do you think that choice feminism is something that do you think it's something that is, this is why we're controversial, but exploited and supported by well-meaning nice guys, knowing that it's not actual feminine, like it's not intersectional it's not going to do anything?
100%.
Yeah.
Isn't that like why these men are like, I have an equal partner? No, I don't do shit at home. No, I don't do shit at home.
She likes doing
silly.
that.
Yes, she's better at it.
She's better at it.
She's better at it. I'm much better than my dad ever was. And so
I'm starting to see
partner.
why certain content creators are either prioritized or get more speaking engagements than we do. Because this is a much more easily dislikable message. Like this is like, no, hey, it's equivalent to spiritual bypassing within religion, right? It's the thing of like, no, don't platitude me. We need to talk about how your participation in this oppressive religious structure is contributing to the pain of other people. And just because you don't want to associate with it doesn't mean you're not part of that whole system. That's a lot more upsetting than, well, you could donate to this nonprofit.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. There are, as that video went the viral video that I am talking about, where it was like the whole point of feminism is that we should be able to have the choice. Like that's what it was. In my mind, that goes in the same category as like hire your village, like make enough money so that you can pay
hire
other
out.
people
Mm-hmm.
to do that sort of thing. And like these arguments that the village no longer exists and all of that stuff. And I get it. And especially, I want to add this piece of nuance. Again, like our Lord and Savior. I'm not gonna pedestalize her, but Bell Hooks has very many great things to say and has taught me a lot. She talks about, you know, being a Black woman who come from generations of being exploited, and like the amount of rest that it gives you to be able to hire out. Like, so when I as a as a privileged white woman talk about like, oh, well, just hiring it out, like that's not the way toward, I'm like, I would also hate to ever cause any kind of guilt or give any sort of criticism to somebody who feels liberated by being able to outsource. Like, there's so much nuance to it.
There's so much nuance. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt that thought. I think that it's also like on a spectrum of self-discovery, or like engaging in those spaces and like moving beyond something like choice feminism, where it's like, yeah, there is a stage where, I mean, we have people who come and clean the house to outsource that part of it, that part of our domestic labor. And we also prioritize like trying to do it in the most ethical way possible, making sure that they're being paid a living wage, like making sure that we're, like I was talking to somebody earlier today, it's our goal as a family is not to get the best deal. It's to pay someone what they're worth, because that's what we value, is that like we want people to not be dehumanized by a system. And because we can't operate outside of a capitalist system currently, this is how we're approaching it. So like those stepping stones to like, here's how we're going to approach it is like you're saying is okay. Like it's okay. You don't need to feel, don't beat yourself up over trying to figure that out.
Right. Yeah, that's a good framing. Like, I think that there is a lens of looking at it where I think that choice feminism sometimes slips into, which again is like, yeah, wouldn't it be so great if we could all have the choice to have a career or stay home, and it like have the privilege to do either one of those things. And I think what both of us are saying is like, it misses so much more of the big picture, because it's like, why do you want to work? Why would you want to stay home? What are you getting out of that? What do you value? And I think like there was that article, it went viral, or it was shared a lot like a year ago, where it was a woman, very high power CEO, talking about how she was like, how do I do it all? I outsource it. And she's like, you know, she hires absolutely everybody to do the majority of the aspects of her, like the caregiving in her home. And I think, at least for me, when I read that sort of thing, I'm like, my question just comes down to like, why?
Yes.
Who-
Right.
Why are you at a certain point? And I say that again, because this is like the question that I have in my own mind all the time, where I'm like, why am I motivated by this thing? What do I want to get out of this situation? Why would I want a job that pays more past what I can afford and sustain my family well and like live and rest? Why would I want to work harder?
Right.
Is that because of messaging from the Catholic Church that says that I'm nothing without constant backbreaking work?
Yeah.
Or is it because I'm like, is it some other reason? And so that's like, I guess what I'm getting at is the questioning of like, I think that choice feminism, it leaves in my head, like autonomy, ease, care, connection, the choice of how to do that is what I think of. Like that's liberation,
right?
Not being like, do I want to work or stay home?
Right. And like you said, it's that binary, like not taking into account that not everyone has the privilege to have that binary choice, right? Of like, oh, okay, well, if it's just like the opportunity to choose, then we've done it. We solved feminism. Like there's no need for it because we're all equal. Women can be firefighters now, right? Like it's not, that's not that again, that's the very surface level thing. That's just enough work to be like, stop talking about it. Women can be in the army now. Aren't you happy? It's like, no, that's not, because again, like you said, like what's motivating
the military industrial complex must fall. I don't want women to be in the fucking military.
Oh, right. It's like
no hate against, I'm not trying to be an asshole against.
Too late. I already tweeted it.
God damn it.
Well, and in the intro or the forward to, it's one of the two, Let This Radicalize You. One of the writer is being interviewed by like a prolific community organizer, and the interviewer asks this person, well, if we don't have prisons, like if you're for abolishment and or if you're an abolitionist and we should abolish prisons, what do we do without prisons? And the community organizer says, what do you think we should do instead of prisons? And it's this idea that it's like, no, like in collective liberation, the discussion should not be at each other. It has to be with each other. And it like offloading that, you know what it feels like? Choice feminism, the connection I'm making is that it's an offloading of the responsibility to not have to dig any deeper for the answer. If I can hire someone out and I make enough money to hire someone out, I don't have to dig into how intersectionally it doesn't liberate other women who don't have the means for money to do this. Right?
Yeah.
It's like that doesn't fix anything. That's just avoiding the rest of the conversation and being like, well, we found it. We did it.
Yeah. I think like well-intended.
Oh, sure.
The answer. I think that like when people say, liberation would be like, women can choose. Women just want to be able to choose. I think if you're, to your point, in Let This Radicalize You, it's Kelly Hayes and Miriam Kaba. The question, right, is always, the answer is that we question, and that we always like radical hope, like radical curiosity and imagination. And so when I think what conditions would it have to be in our society for every person to be able to choose how they spend their time? And when I ask that question, I'm like, oh, our bosses can't be exploitative. All care needs to matter.
It gets
dignity of all people. It's like,
which is why we talk about the systems when you came here to talk about fair play. Like you came to the podcast initially because that's what we were talking about. That's why we're talking about. You will inevitably hear us talk about this shit where, I mean, honestly, a lot of people get turned off by it because it's like, it's not that big of a deal. And it's like, well, yeah,
it's a huge deal.
You and I mean, we're two white women with a podcast, but Black, brown, and indigenous women have been talking about this for ages, like for decades, for hundreds of years. Like this is not new messaging. This is not something new that we're saying. But I do think that it is very rare for it to be, it's not as easily digestible.
No. And it's so funny. Because I want to say like a couple of years ago, I was hesitant to even like say the word patriarchy or like be very explicit and name it. And I'm not, obviously we are not afraid to say that, but it goes so deep, especially just like in these times as we see imperialism and colonialism, just like, I mean, it's always been there, but it's so in our face. And through COVID, the way that capitalism is prioritized, the Breonna Taylor, George Floyd protests, seeing white supremacy all up in our face, like all of it's just so fascinating. It really is big picture. I'm glad we get to talk about it.
No, I am too, especially since otherwise, like you said, I mean, I think I'm embarrassed that it took me so long to dive into those bigger systems because that wasn't something I did or had in mind when I had kids, when I was still a part of the church. Like those were not things that I prioritized. And like you said, there's so many things that are just like so upfront and in our face now. I feel like especially post COVID, but even before then, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I guess for me, an upper class white woman, that was my threshold of like, okay, well, like I can't busy myself with something else to pretend like this isn't happening anymore. And to pretend like this, and with my kids getting older, it's like I can't. That's the legacy I want to leave. Is that like is passing that message on to my kids of, hey, what the fuck? Like, you don't allow someone to be bullied, and standing back and not doing nothing is not enough. If you want softer phrases, I can give you, aside from, hey, get fucked, like get away from that kid. I can give you softer phrases, but not doing that. Like you humanizing people is what we're going to prioritize in this household.
Yeah, that's what's, I mean, great way to circle back to the idea of a legacy. In my mind, the idea that a legacy has to be in the form of a child of your molding and shaping is so, it's manipulated. It is a situation that is manipulated by churches, by capitalism. You got to be productive, leave a legacy. And it's like, what if you planted a tree?
Yeah.
Like, truly, what if you made a friend in your neighborhood?
Yep.
You impacted a child that is not your blood and guts. I don't know what the term from your loins.
Yeah. What if a child not of your seed was the benefit of your involvement in their life?
What if you saved someone's life? You know, like what if you just contributed something to the world that wasn't your own child? That's cool too. You know?
Yeah.
But also, like, that's not what legacy should be.
And isn't the only definition, right, to your point, is not the only definition of what legacy can mean. I also, just really quickly, because I don't know if you have this tidbit, this kind of like came out a little bit later. Guess what Harrison Butker's mom does?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
She is a physicist who has worked at Emory in oncology since like the 1980s. Guess who wasn't a stay-at-home mom?
I wonder what she's going through right now. And his wife did come out and say,
I really enjoy being
mm-hmm.
Of course. I have not seen any of that. Of course she did. What's she going to do?
No doubt. Good for them. I wish they would not be such brave soldiers and speak so bravely.
They can be a little quieter. God can hear you. You don't need to be so loud.
Oh, sorry. I'm just a loudmouth cancel culture social justice warrior.
I'm just a socialist. Nobody needs to listen to me. It's fine. Just mind me over here. Well, thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate it. Share, subscribe, review, all of it. We appreciate you being here. We also have a Patreon where you can listen to these episodes ad-free, $5 a month, and whatever other crazy random bonus content shit Laura and I come up with. Usually it's off the dome because I don't know if you guys know this, but we both have ADHD. So sometimes it's just whatever we want. But yeah, you can join our Patreon, be a part of that community, or continue the conversation about the podcast there as well. It's a place
you can comment,
you can talk about it.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Pretty cool.
Thank you guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Yeah, bye. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Time to Lean. Your questions and stories are what keep us going, so keep those voicemails and messages coming.
Until our next episode, remember that you can always find us on social media and, of course, in your podcast feed.
You can also subscribe for $5 a month on Spotify for uninterrupted episodes and bonus content.
We're so grateful for your support. See you next time.